My name is Carlos Mendes. If anyone survived my lengthy presentation or my speech this morning, thank you, and you'll know who I am. I am going to be introducing this panel, and this is such a key topic. As I kind of mentioned before this morning, that similar kind of trajectory that breweries go through, where a couple of people get together, they follow a dream, they work really hard. Year of 15-hour days, 20-hour days, they get to the point where they've opened up. They're working hard. They think they're not going to be that busy. They're super busy. And one day they wake up and they got a staff. They got issues. They got a whole bunch of regulatory provisions they got to comply with and obligations as an employer. And let's be honest, a bit too often in the industry, people aren't aware. They're not aware of what that is, and it can land them in trouble. And so the organizers have put together a panel of experts who are going to provide a lot of key intel on what to do with your HR program, with your staff, how to run your brewery properly. So we're really pleased to have them here today. So first we have Lory Fairfield. Lory is knowledgeable about the Workers' Compensation Act, employment standards in 4 provinces, and dozens of constantly changing codes and acts relating to employers in Canada and the US. He's been consulting in human resources and labor relations for more than 25 years. Much of Lory's background is working with employers to create a workplace where the employers and management share a common perspective for the workplace. He develops and implements custom human resource programs for smaller employers and that management can easily understand and operate, and workers will support and engage in. Next, we have Sami. Sami Sallovitz has been described as a #rebelpreneur, a true HD disruptor. Launching her indie consultancy company earlier this year, she is energetic and innovative people and culture human relation professional with 13 years of progressive experience with a focus on compensation and total rewards. As an entrepreneur, her goal is to work with young, growing, socially conscious businesses. As a top-scoring chartered professional of human resources, CPHR, she demonstrates people partnership at all levels, from floor staff to senior management, and uses creativity and an innovative mindset to design, develop, implement programs that drive performance, elevate engagement, and lead to positive change in the workplace. Outside of her workplace passions, Sami is a plant yogi, a bee whisperer, has a music soul, and an ocean heart. She's an aspiring DJ, a NASA follower, and a fur mama to @Billy Sallow, which I'm only going to assume is a dog.
She is a dog.
There you go. You can also
She's
find
a human in a dog body.
with an old soul, right?
Exactly.
With an old soul. You can find her on Instagram at @SamJamCo. And finally, we have Megan Martin. She's a WorkSafe BC manager, industry and labor services, manufacturing, and retail. Megan holds a bachelor degree in business administration with a concentration on human resources and risk management. She is a Canadian registered safety professional. The ILS manufacturing and retail team partners with stakeholders in BC's manufacturing and retail subsectors to reduce the incidence and severity of work-related injury, illness, disease, and death, and to improve stay at work and return to work outcomes. So I'd like to welcome the panel today. Okay. So the way this is going to work is we're going to go through, everyone's prepared a presentation. So they'll do the presentation, I'll ask a couple of questions. You can jump in then and ask your own questions, or you can wait till the end, and then we can ask the whole panel some questions. So first off, we're going to have Lory.
Thanks, Carlos. I've been working with the brewers, various brewers in BC now for over 2 years. I started out, I've got 10 minutes to do a 1-hour presentation, so this is going to move quick. I'm not going to charge anybody anything unless you come, and I'll tell you if it ever happens. So if in the middle of it, sorry, I thought you were handing me something. If in the middle of your day tomorrow you realize you want to talk to me, call me. I'll be happy to answer any questions. So don't worry if something goes scooting by and I didn't cover it well enough. I'll do my best to cover things. I'm going to try to show you what is minimally required in an HR program for a craft brewer in British Columbia. There's a lot of stuff depending on British Columbia, so we're going to, and I'm using a Mac. I'm not a Mac person, so give me a second here. There we go. So, again, there's my number. Call me if you have any questions. Happy to help out whatever I can, all right? So, the challenge you folks face is that you run breweries. You are a brewer. You're not an HR person. You're not an accountant. You're not a pensions and benefits person. You run a brewery. You make good beer. If you don't make good beer, you're not a brewer for long.
TT for that.
Yeah. So the basic premise I need you to understand and accept is that people prefer to have walls. They want to have rules. They want to know that wherever they are aware of what's expected of them, what's a good job, what's a bad job, things like that. So I would normally take a long time explaining that, but we're not going to have that today. We're just going to go straight into what are your obligations as an employer. So these are the rules that govern you guys. In these rules are also the things that govern your workers. And it's important that you're aware of what these things are and that they're aware of what they are. Okay, so we all know employment standards. The rule book for employment standards is the Employment Standards Act. We all know that. These 6 points here are a tiny portion of the Employment Standards Act, but they do a pretty darn good job of outlining what you're expected to do. Problem with these is they're designed for everything in BC. So as you can imagine, point A for a Subway sandwich artist is going to be different than if it's a nuclear physicist. But you're expected to accommodate these purposes. Point F, I've still never figured out how we're supposed to, how they measure that, but there it is, contribute to assisting employees to meet workplace and family responsibilities. You're expected to know this stuff. You're obligated to understand this stuff. And you're obligated to make sure your workers understand this stuff. No, you're not having a stroke. This is just what's happening. I've had one, I know. WorkSafe BC, Megan here. This is the overview of what WorkSafe BC expects of you. The Workers' Compensation Act, correct me if I'm wrong, is the thing that governs them. This is sort of the broadest, widest rule book for folks like yourselves. The thing I want to really stress is that it says every employer must. I'm not using the word must. They are using the word must. So every employer must, and this is just a little excerpt. All this stuff jammed in there. So you're expected to yourselves know, let me get over to my notes, that workers and whether from the bottom worker to the owner of your company, has to reasonably foresee safety hazards. They're required, everyone is required to know the regulations that govern that workplace, your workplace. They are required. This is something you have to do. They have to know what their rights and duties are. Go away. What their rights and duties are under the Workers' Compensation Act. Okay? You are obligated to keep everything in a safe order. You are obligated to give them the proper safety protection equipment. I'm not going to go into who you are. It might be ABC Brewers who runs the place, but there's a really scary fact about who you is when they say you are obligated to keep your employees safe and educate them in the use of all of this stuff. You are obligated, you must make a copy of the Workers' Compensation Act and make it available to your employees, your workers. I've never walked into a brewery that has that. You're supposed to do that. So, what are the first steps to doing it? I do all this stuff. I'm not selling my stuff to you guys. If you call me and talk to me, I'll try to sell you my program. I'll tell you how to do it yourself as well. But in a rough outline, and again, don't try to write all this stuff down because it's not going to happen. You should all minimally have 3 different policies and procedures. One of them is a general policy and procedure, one of them is the health and safety, and the other one's your workplace violence and harassment policy and procedure. You can download those off the internet, you can ask me for them, you can do anything, but you should have them. The way they work, this one is the one that my clients use. My clients are like Bomber and Four Winds and Hoyne are 3 that are using this set. And this document outlines your obligations to your employees. You're telling your employees, here's what I'm going to do for you. And as importantly, more importantly, it makes them obligate to do certain things back to you. all of your policies and procedures linked together. They're all tied up. You can see where they've all got their own little code number, their code name, and they all cross over, so that if one of the good folks at WorkSafe BC comes in for an inspection, you can show that you have your policies and procedures and that they're all linked in. And after the new people have been hired, you can also see that the employees have been told about them, read them, signed them, and understand them, and there's copies of each one in that employee's file. So employees, this is not just a wave the flag and say, oh, I'm going to be safe. Their file shows they've read these policies and procedures, they know what they are, they understand their obligations, and you have a copy of it in their file. Health and safety procedures does the same thing. It's for the employer's responsibilities, the employee's responsibilities, and again outlines who is obligated to do what for who, and also signed by the employee. This one is the big one. This is the workplace violence and harassment policy. If you're running a front of house and a back of house, you've got servers, you've got kitchen staff, you've got production people, you've got a lot of different cultures working closely with each other, and it's really important that they understand what their obligations are in workplace violence and harassment. This document is big and nasty because it has a lot of definitions in there that have to be explained to an employee at the time of hire. Hiring a person in the brewing industry goes from being, what I understand it is for most folks, hi, welcome, you got a pulse, can I see your resume, cool, no murder, you're in. This takes longer, but it's important you do it. So in the hiring process, I got 3 minutes left, damn. Application form. That isn't working very well. Let's go back. I've sent this out to many of the brewers. Easy to brand, this is what you give to somebody. If they give you a resume, you hand them this, and they fill it out too. You can see a lot about a person by how they fill out this application form. The application form provides just enough information for them, not too much, doesn't commit anything that you shouldn't be committing at the time of a job application. Next one is the employment contract. Huge document. It's important that you contract to your employees what their jobs are, what their pay is, what their vacation is, what your pensions, benefits, all that stuff is in this document. You can go onto the internet and pull one of these down. They're pretty much everywhere. If you do, you want to be sure it's brewery specific. You change it to fit the brewery. You want it flexible for front of house, back of house, sales staff, administration, things like that. Don't overcommit on it. And most importantly, if you do write one of these things for yourself, get a lawyer to look at it. Sure, him. I don't know him, but I'm sure his people. Here's a pump for this guy.
When I'm sober, I can read the contract.
The idea being that you can do yourself some harm with these if you overcommit. Briefly, if you tell somebody you're in charge of the 25 people over here, and then one day you move him and he's only in charge of 10, that's almost constructive dismissal because you committed to 25 people working for him. So it's not a simple thing to do, but be sure you do it right. This is the one that I use for my guys, and it's just you chop it up and use whatever you need out of it. And pointless there. Oh yeah, this isn't going to work. So all the stuff I've just ripped through in 9 minutes and 29 seconds. How do you keep track of it all? Why do you do it? You do it so everybody's hired the right way, the same way, every time. You have a list, a tick mark list in every person's folder, in every employee file. It says we've gone through this and this, we've explained that, we've explained this, he signed this, I've signed that, he signed this, it's all in the file folder, and then you hand them off to a supervisor. This is, if you do something yourselves in a smaller fashion, be sure that you have something like this in the employee file signed as I've completed it or somebody's completed it every time. I am dead at a time, so I'm going to quickly go through to the stuff the employees really like, though you don't think it. You think everybody's afraid of this. Every employee, when they sit down to be interviewed, is shown what the progressive discipline program looks like. It explains to them what they've done wrong, how it happened, what we're talking about, verbal warning, written warning, final warning, how they're going to fix it, what they're supposed to do to fix it, what happened previously, any history on the offense. They sign it, you sign it, it goes into the employee file. The idea with that is there's a record in the file that the employee can go and look at it at any time, and if somebody becomes a problem in a year's time and you got 7 of those in there, you're in a better place to correct and move them down the road. Personal development, We're going to blast right through this one. This is just a program you have in the file for an employee who you want to do a review on. This is a simple little system for being sure that they do everything right. I am 1 minute and 6 seconds over. And sorry, I just took 1 minute and 6 seconds of your time. If you got any questions, really, given the amount of time we have, probably hold them to the end and let the other good players move through.
Okay.
Sorry for being so fast, guys. It's just, I don't know how to. Thank you.
Thank you, Lory.
And again, please call me. I'll be happy to answer any questions anyone has. And my cards are up here if you want to. I don't know how to get out of that. Sorry.
Do we want to just jump right in
Yeah,
then?
might as
Okay.
well. I can ask the questions if you.
Okay. I'm gonna pull up mine then. Okay. I'm Sami. So Lory talked a little bit about what you need to do or have to do. I'm going to talk about what you want to do. So 75% of your employees are not engaged. Does that not bring up a red flag for you? That's 3/4 of the population in Canada. And this isn't about employee satisfaction or happiness where they, show up at work and shoot the shit with their friends and have a good time. That's awesome, it's a perk, but what I'm referring to is engagement. And engagement is when an employee is committed and invested in the growth of your business. They're invested in seeing your business succeed. So what does that mean for you? So what? Well, it's costing you. In fact, it's costing you, based on a study by Gallup, 34% of your current salary spend. So if you're a business that has $1 million right now you're spending on salaries, which isn't a lot of money for a small business if you are thinking about how you pay your senior managers and your managers, you're throwing away $340,000 out the window because your employees are not engaged. So when employees are asked why they're not engaged, they're saying it's compensation. So what about comp? Well, they think they're being underpaid. When the market research takes place and we find out really what's going on, they actually are being paid relative to market. So what's the miss? What's happening here? I have to go through my notes because make sure I get the message right. When employees are asked if they were willing to accept less pay, if the reason was justified or it was explained, then 82% said yes. So again, what is the miss? What's causing this gap, this disconnect? It's a lack of communication. Managers and employees are not talking. People and their businesses are not talking. And it's also a perception, right? This perception that I'm being underpaid, when in reality, they might actually be paid what their job pays according to market. Oh, there's an We were counting ums earlier.
Ums and likes.
There's two. The reason why I want to show you this is because comp is just the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot more that we can do to increase and elevate engagement, and this is the secret sauce. So this is an upside down inverted triangle because the emphasis is now comp, because we got to start somewhere, and employees are saying that's what they're not happy with currently. So let's solve the compensation problem. But there's also an opportunity to look at it from, you might have heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Your physiological needs at the bottom, it pays for your food, your shelter, your clothing, right? So that's what comp does for you. But then at the top, you have self-actualization, and that's when you feel like you're connected to your job, to your career, to the business that you're offering your time to. This is how employees, especially millennials, think nowadays, right? They are investing their time in your business. So we can do a lot more than just comp, and this is just the beginning. So the reason why I reached out to Ken Beatty, who I used to work with at Sleeman, and I feel like the craft beer business is in the perfect opportunity to do something about this, to bridge this gap, because you're young, you're nimble, you're growing, you're not a dinosaur that's kind of stuck in the, you know, what era was that? I don't remember. I'm talking about the times of, like, you know, I don't know. There's big guys, right? The big guys that just didn't realize this stuff, that were just so focused on just commercial. It has nothing to do with the times. It has to do more with, like, a mindset, I think.
Molson Labatt, let's call them that, okay?
Not calling any names. So this is why I want to be here today, is to talk to you guys, to let you know that there's something that we can do about this. If you want to bridge this gap, I'm here to support this. And there's two ways that we can do this. So one is we get to the facts. We get to the bottom of what are beer jobs really worth today. So we go to market, we do the research and get accurate compensation data, right? One of the ways that we can do this here with beer is look at it from an industry level. So we do an industry level salary survey, and we don't share the information specifically, like you wouldn't have access to specific employee data, but you would share your information with a funnel, which would be myself. We kept confidentially, and then those that participate, so either Beer Guild members or non-members, maybe there could be like a tier in the pricing or things like that, but then the results are shared. So you're now equipped with the information to make better decisions, to start having the conversation with your people. Because what are you gonna say when your employee asks, what's my salary based on? Is it a shot in the dark? Is it, you know, it's just some idea? Maybe some anecdotal data, fine, but I think you need to ask yourself, what is that information worth to you when you're throwing away, again, 34% of your salary spend? Knowledge is power, right? Knowledge is power for you, knowledge is power for the employee. It becomes a win-win. And this is just the beginning, because comp is the tip of the iceberg, like I mentioned. The other thing we could do is we can have a brewery, whoever's interested, to put together a smart compensation plan. And what that entails is 5 key things. So we go into philosophy, so we get a sense of what are your values? What are your values from a management perspective, and what are your values from an employee perspective? And then you can design programs that are actually specific to your business. So the industry is everybody, so we're sharing information, we have data. This is more going in and being specific, strategic, and intentional about what sits well for your business. It's customized. Then we go into strategy. We go, okay, so how do you want to sit relative to market? Do you want to lead the market? Do you want to, you know, lag the market? Want to offer something different other than compensation? You want to get into the total rewards piece of things, that kind of thing. Then you build a structure. You can have a banding system. And this is the same model for every single piece of the total rewards piece. So you have, you know, a benefits plan. Let's look at what your benefits plan could look like from a design perspective. So you have a structure, a bonus plan, etc. Then we put together some ground rules, some SOPs. How is this machine going to be maintained by who, when, where, how, etc. And then probably the most vital piece of this is the education, because this is when you're equipping your managers and your supervisors and your team leads on how to have the actual compensation conversation. Because right now, they're scratching their heads. I don't know, HR told me so. And that's like the worst thing we want to hear in HR, is it not? So education really goes a long way, and that's where you want to invest in the most. So I leave you with a question. Who's looking after this piece of the work? Is it your finance department, who's really should be focusing on crunching numbers and doing the analytics? Is it your HR person? How far stretched are they? Do you have one? Do you have enough resources for your resourcing team? Do they even know how to do this stuff? I mean, this is 13 years I've been doing this, and it can't be taught overnight. There's definitely an art and a science to it if you want to do it right. So I'm here to provide that solution for you. And as far as next steps, what I'd like to for us to do is I put together a sign-up sheet here. There's really no commitment. It just lets us know what the sample size could be for the survey. So we just need your name, your contact information, where you're located, and then we can get a sense of whether we should be investing in this kind of work. The other thing I'd like to offer is a 50% off my fees if you're ready and willing to start building a compensation plan. And then, of course, if you have any questions, I'm always happy to geek out about this stuff because this stuff's I'm pretty passionate about. So that's it for me. I don't know how I did with time.
20 seconds early.
Woo! All right.
Look at you go.
Q&A.
Yeah, but you drove one guy out of the room.
Gotta make an impact somehow. Yeah, we'll keep going then. Okay. I can get moderate for you. See if it lets me do the slideshow.
If you get them all today, you get a Prezi, you get a Google Docs, and you get a PowerPoint.
Diversity.
It's up there. Okay, so Megan Martin, I work for WorkSafe BC, and I'm not an officer. Everyone thinks everyone at WorkSafe is an officer or handles claims. I don't do either of those. So you kind of know what my job was because it was introduced earlier. I work with industry and labor, and we look at problems that are going on in the industry and figure out how to solve them together and how to communicate them across the industry to support worker health and safety. So I thought with this presentation, based on the people that I've met today at our booth out there, that we have some that are just starting up, may not even have a facility yet, to those who are already established. So if I'm covering things you already know, my apologies. If not, I hope you learned something new. So why do we have workers' compensation? It's basically insurance. It started from the historic compromise, which basically means that we are no longer allowed as workers to sue our employers if we get injured at work. So we pay the insurance and the insurance takes care of it. We also have a regulatory piece to what we do at WorkSafe BC, and that's the enforcement piece that you would see with officers when they come and visit your locations, and if they do find deficiencies, it could result in orders. So those are the two basic functions of our company, and then we have the prevention side, which is a part of what I'm in my part. To talk more about the insurance benefits, you can't get this kind of insurance anywhere else, so it's kind of a one-stop shop. Your employees will be eligible for benefits if they do get injured while they're at work. It is mandatory for most employers in BC. The premiums are paid by you. The claims money goes to the worker. And the premiums paid by the employers cannot be deducted from employees' pay. I say this not because I think you don't know that, but because this presentation is created for all small businesses and there's varying levels of knowledge, so I just needed to make sure that was clear. To define the insurance benefits, basically all workers are covered. It's no fault. It does not cover for pain and suffering, and it's only available to injured workers when they're working for somebody else. Some of the benefits include covering wages, rehabilitation for the worker, permanent or partial disability, and pensions. And it's automatic to those workers. It's optional if you're a sole proprietor, their spouses, and partners. So you really need to go to WorkSafeBC.com to learn more about that. So you might be wondering, what does this insurance cost? Right there in the middle where it says $1.58 per $100 of accessible payroll, that is what the base rate is. So that is what, if you're brand new, that is what your company would be charged per $100 of accessible payroll. And then you see on the right there, there's a surcharge. That's the maximum you could potentially pay. And then at the left side, it's a discount. So why are there two different numbers there? Well, if you perform better than the average of that group that you're put in, you can actually get in a discount situation. So if you have good safety programs, you don't have a lot of incidents, or if you do, those people come back to work, they're engaged, they want to return, and they're able to do modified duties, then that can help you get in that discount situation, which gets you currently under $1 at 79 cents if you have the maximum 50% discount. Surcharges for those employers who are having extensive claims. They might be a lot of lost time usually is what it comes down to. That's what drives the cost of claims, and that could get up to $3.16. So we want to try to help you get your workers healthy, safe, and get you down to that lowest rate. So how do we do that? Well, small businesses in BC, they have some challenges. There could be limited knowledge in occupational health and safety. And the other thing is there's also limited resources. How do you have enough time to focus on getting all the paperwork right and making sure that everybody knows how to do things the right way? But there's the strengths we have to look at, and it's that those family relationships that you have with your employees, that they love their jobs, they love what they do, and they're very engaged. Your businesses are also really good at adapting to things and changing as needed, or taking new ideas and initiatives and implementing them. So taking some of that, let's look at what the responsibilities are as an employer and a worker. Employers' basic jobs are to look at identifying the hazards in the workplace, making sure that you're doing that through inspections, training your workers so they know how to do their jobs, supervise them, make sure that everyone is reporting injuries, investigate the incidents so you can learn how to prevent, make sure they don't happen again, fix problems that get reported if it's a piece of broken equipment or if there's a leak, make sure that it gets resolved permanently, record training, meetings, and safety issues so that you can learn from them and see if there's trends. So the worker's job is to basically follow the safety rules. Ask for help if they don't know how to do something. Notify the employer if something's unsafe in the workplace, report their injuries, and make sure that they're keeping their workplace safe and wearing appropriate PPE, that sort of thing. So basically, if they're taught to do something, they're supposed to follow those instructions. Let's look at some of the incidents, and this is for small business, but it tends to be kind of industry-wide. So you'll see there with the chart, the most common injury that you'll see is overexertion. So those are people that are doing lifting, some sort of manual handling. It's very common in this industry as well. Think of the large barrels that you're working with, the kegs that might be lifted. There is equipment to use. However, some people are still trying to do that manually, so keep that in mind. That's what's going to lead to those overexertion injuries. But what leads to the most costly incidents? As I spoke before, the cost is often driven by the lost time from work. It's not always the medical that drives that. So fall from elevation. If you have places where people are climbing ladders or getting at elevated heights in your workplace, maybe they're cleaning a piece of equipment and need to get up to get a proper angle at it. If they're falling, they're more likely to have a serious injury. It could result in a concussion or something devastating, could result in death. That's why 25% of the costs come from that fall in elevation. So where do you get resources? How do you learn how to improve what you're doing in your workplace? Well, if you want to learn how to apply for coverage, it's in my presentation deck. I'm not sure if I'll be able to share it with you, but I'd love to if I can. There's a link there you'll be able to click on. It'll take you right to our website. We also have an employer service center, which you can call and ask questions. We can also help you understand what the insurance costs are associated. If your company requires coverage, maybe you're a sole proprietor and you have questions there, we'll answer all of that. You might be wondering what a clearance letter is. So if you have someone come in and do some work for you, they're not one of your employees, but you're subcontracting to them, a good due diligence effort, making sure that you've made sure that they're a good company to bring in and operate safely and have insurance themselves so you're not liable for them, is to make sure they have a clearance letter which shows that they are paid up with WorkSafe BC. We also have our occupational health and safety regulations online for your access, and it's all searchable, so you can type in what you're interested in and it'll find what you need. We have health and safety information, notice of projects, and there's also notice of serious incidents. So I didn't talk about it, but if you do have a serious workplace accident, there is a requirement to report it. So if you want to learn more about what qualifies serious, come talk to me at the booth. It does require timely notification so that we can send someone out and make sure that a proper investigation is done. The next slide I have here is just more information for small businesses. We realize that small businesses don't have all the resources that many large employers have. And we don't want you to be at a disadvantage. So we have many tools and resources for training. We have a whole kit of safe start tips. It has restaurants, retail, things on forklifts, ladders. It's all online. It's all free. So just get on WorkSafe BC, pull those resources, and feel free to utilize them.
Just to complement that, when I most of my history was in manufacturing in Ontario and some in BC, and the WorkSafe BC site was where I went to turn all of my stuff I knew about manufacturing, heavy mechanical stuff, into brewer stuff. So it is there, it is free, it is relatively easy to use, but as Megan says, you just got to commit the time to it, and it's really not that difficult if you want to do it yourself and you don't want to use some outside resource. You can go on there and you can learn about it, and it's really very straightforward to use.
Thank you. Thank you. Good plug there.
All right, go ahead. Yeah. Wake up.
Yeah, as you and I were chatting before, like, as a good starting point, I always say to people starting out that, yeah, there are resources on government websites that you can go to, that you can get, just kind of getting your mind around what your obligations are going to be and what you're going to be taking on, because it is a different mindset, and it's not things you would naturally think of if you're running your business for the first time. Maybe you have a background in brewing, never run a business before, so it's a big difference. So a couple of questions to each of you, and then I'll just open up the floor here. You know, I know why it's really important to have a solid HR program, and I know what the risks are, but Lory, could you tell us a little bit more about what are the risks of not having a program in place?
I stressed it a lot, and that is this word must. And the must part of it, yes, it involves, it's there so that you get the employee engagement. It's there so that your employees know you care. More importantly is the HR program, it's just a silly little group of words that's used too often, but it is how you manage your employees from the moment they first hand you a resume until the moment they move on to another place or you let them go for some reason. Right inside there, from your own personal perspectives, you understand how important that is, how you were treated at previous jobs and how your employees like to be treated. You get HR wrong at that level, and really wrong, and you have some serious problems as an individual, because you guys are personally responsible. You get it wrong at a lighter level, and somebody wanders off really upset and angry, or you feel like you've been slighted. So it's a very tired group of words to describe a huge piece of your operation, which is you and the people who work with you. Sorry. Went off on that one.
No, that's great. No, anything more to that? We actually have a little time here.
Okay,
so.
well, no, that's good. I don't want to suck up all the
That's
time.
good. No.
I got some questions for Megan anyway, so
Yeah, okay.
go
Great.
ahead.
So moving on down the line, Sami, you know, obviously, as I kind of mentioned earlier today, I was talking to Joel Houston from First Key about some of his ideas, and a lot of brewers, you know, especially for the first couple of years and even beyond that, depending on the size of their operations, are running on tight budgets. They don't have a lot of money. They don't have a dedicated HR person. When you open a brewery, within a couple of years, you're an accountant, a lawyer, a bricklayer, a plumber, like you got all these resources. So if you don't have the resources in place to develop or to bring someone in to have a comprehensive HR program, what are some like best practices or kind of top line tips that people could use?
Oh boy, I was not prepared for this question. As far as compensation, or as far as engagement, or all the above?
Yeah, maybe what about engagement starting off? Because I know you touched on that and you made some really good points on that.
There's tons of resources out there. I mean, you can just Google it alone and you'll find a ton. But as far as specifically, I mean, if you're small, you have consultants. That's why we choose this type of work, so that we don't. It's expensive to have someone in house, so it's good to have somebody that you can reach out to, that you maybe pay on a retainer or pay on a hourly level, so that you're not committed to bringing somebody in full time, and then we can help bring you up to a certain level. So there's two ways of doing that. I think other ways that you can do, I mean, there's websites out there like PayScale, Salary.com. I mean, Salary.com is more American, but you have Glassdoor. If you want to start doing your own compensation assessment to see how your jobs sit relative to market, they do offer free services. They're very limited because the paid services is based on an actual algorithm where, the free is just going to be kind of a bit of a crapshoot. Yeah.
And so, I mean, if you're trying to find out, like you're going into this process and they saw your presentation, they're like, wow, I never really thought about any of this stuff. Like, how would you start off with trying to find out what the engagement levels are like at your workplace?
Engagement levels, that's a really good question. I mean, on a free level, start talking to your people. Like, it really comes down to that level. Just communication. If you're an owner of a brewery or GM or a manager, just go down to the floor and just ask them questions like, what's going on in your world? How does it feel to be you in this position right now? Be honest with me, but that's an element of trust, right? And a lot of people don't feel comfortable telling the truth because it's a very uncomfortable thing. Something I actually wanted to note is compensation and even engagement is a very emotional thing for people, right? If you just put yourself in that situation, we're all in it, right? Talking about money is just awkward and it's emotional, and so it's building that trust first. Then what you can do is put together an employment engagement survey or hire someone that can put that together for you, and then start really getting to know the real reasons behind it, because then people are more inclined to give you that information when it's through a confidential source, through a way that they can disclose that information without feeling like they're going to get in trouble. Yeah.
I'm about to spend 25 days in Dayton, Ohio, doing that with a manufacturing company. It's a terrible thing to have to do because I'm bitter because I leave tomorrow morning. But it's so important. Megan, you said the same thing, I'm sure. Talk to your people. Just talk to your people. Ask them what's going on. If you don't have the time, and I know what you guys are going through, be sure your management team or your frontline people know what's going on the floor. Right.
Communication, it's like the most fundamental thing from a human being perspective, and we are failing at it.
Well, that's the thing, is like I was saying before, is like you wake up one day and you're like, you're doing all these roles, you're working super late, and you're like, oh, there's maybe a part of my business I've been overlooking that I hadn't turned my mind to, and it's kind of getting in that mindset.
Yeah, it's not to slap anyone in the wrist or anything like that. It's more just to like bring awareness, general awareness of what is it that we can do better, so that in turn your business is going to succeed.
Yeah, and nobody.
When we go and do these things for employers, and we're not the same we, I'm a different we than her we. We ask two questions of these people, on these employees. We ask them, what's working here today? What works when you're at your place of work? Okay, what doesn't work? So we sit there with 20 people in the room and have them tell us what's not working. And that's all it is.
Yeah.
What's working, what's not working? Real simple questions. It's surprising that employers don't ask that, or frontline managers or supervisors aren't asking that of their charges. Some of you folks have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 people working for you. Okay, it's not going to be a crushing. You probably know them all anyway, but you should be sure you're looking at that. It's really critically important.
Yeah, I mean, it's the thing, is like the background that everybody gave here is that there are statutory and regulatory compliance issues that everyone has as a business owner, that, following these tips and thinking about these issues at the front end is going to save you a lot of pain in the long term. So, one thing, Megan, that I'm like super delighted with what the Guild is doing, and bringing people like yourself in, and talking to the LDB and all these things. And I know the board members are so committed to the success of the industry as a whole, and some of the people a little more senior on the Guild board have been working through all these issues in their own businesses, and they want to make sure that best practices are up there. So I know WorkSafe BC is partnering with the Guild quite a bit with programs and supporting them and trying to bring in some knowledge bases for the industry. So what is WorkSafe doing?
Absolutely. Yeah, so we're so grateful that the Guild has wanted to partner with us and look at what some of the common challenges are that you're facing in the breweries. And we're actually going to work with a small subject matter expert group from WorkSafe, and getting the working knowledge from the breweries to develop resources like confined space entry, or how not to enter. We are going to look at a training tool about chemical safety. We are going to look at developing some power industrial trucks and forklift resources, some information about ergonomics, and we want to create a guide. I have some of these, but they're for wineries, But this is basically a guide for small and medium employers that talks about kind of what a safety program should look like, and it's made quite simple. There's sample forms in here, and we're going to create one for the craft brewing industry. So all of these resources we're expecting to get out within the next year, and that's through the partnership.
Very cool. Very cool. So I'll open it up to the audience, and as Ken said, for who was ever in the LDB session, I'm going to repeat your question on the microphone. So if you can keep it as short as possible, or you're going to have to come up here and talk in the mic if it's super long. So does anybody have any questions for the panel? Okay.
Sami, you mentioned that there's you're going to try and get a survey done for the craft brewers here in the Vancouver area, but are there any surveys for craft brewery industry on compensation that are available public now? Maybe they're a little bit outdated, or national, or province-wide, or is there any resources like that available?
I'm not aware
Sorry.
of any. I'm not aware of any that are currently being published for the craft beer industry. I suspect there's definitely one for commercial, but I know that the big guys like Labatt and Bev, Molson, they will hire companies like Mercer. I don't know exactly who they use, but you know, they'll hire companies like Mercer or Towers. Oh, they changed their name so many times. Towers
It's
Watson,
even easier.
Towers Perrin.
If you want to look at
all
those,
these-
just get the collective agreements. All their wages are in there. They're
But
on
you
the
can't
line.
have, you don't have access to all the collective agreements. Well, they're published somewhere, but that's a lot of work. That's a lot of work. If you can just imagine going through multiple collective agreements that you may or may not have access to.
You don't want to see the numbers anyway.
So,
So the
They
question
pay-
was, are there any HR surveys that the breweries can have access to?
yeah, so it depends because the
compensation surveys.
jobs in beer are so specialized too, right? So you might have a production assistant job available. You might have support jobs available for sure, but like brewmasters, assistant brewers, what other jobs do we have in the beer industry that are more specialized? Might not be as readily available that I'm aware of, but it's worth looking at.
Any other questions?
I'll just add something to that. Beer Canada does publish that information. Just
Awesome.
FYI.
Yep.
I'm writing that down.
Same.
Okay, nothing else? Nothing else for our panel? Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
To everyone for coming. Thank you for the three of you for making yourselves available and sharing all this information. Come
for
and if you
having
want to
us.
ask questions to them, you know, off the mic aside. I know they're here and willing, ready, willing, and able to answer your questions. So thank you so much for coming.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.